Jacob is a prominent figure in the Bible, whose story is both complex and compelling. He is known for being the son of Isaac and Rebekah, the twin brother of Esau, and the father of 12 sons who would become the founders of the 12 tribes of Israel. However, his life was far from easy, and his story is one of struggle, deceit, and ultimately, redemption. Jacob's early life. Jacob was born into a family with a complicated history. His grandfather was Abraham, who was called by God to leave his homeland and go to a new land that God would show him. Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was born to Abraham's wife's servant, Hagar, while Isaac was born to Abraham's wife, Sarah, who had been barren for many years. Isaac later married Rebekah, and they had twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Jacob's birth was marked by a prophetic message from God that he would be the younger brother, and that he would ultimately be greater than his older brother, Esau. This message would play a significant role in Jacob's life, as he would spend much of it trying to gain the birthright and blessing that rightfully belonged to Esau. As a young man, Jacob was known for his cunning and his ability to scheme. He tricked his older brother, Esau, out of his birthright by offering him a bowl of stew in exchange for it. Later, when their father, Isaac, was old and blind, Jacob tricked him into giving him the blessing that was meant for Esau by pretending to be him. Jacob's struggle with God. Jacob's life took a dramatic turn when he fled from his home after angering his brother, Esau. He traveled to a far-off land and eventually settled in the household of his uncle, Laban. There, he fell in love with Laban's daughter, Rachel, and agreed to work for Laban for 7 years in exchange for her hand in marriage. However, Laban deceived Jacob by giving him Rachel's older sister, Leah, instead. Jacob then agreed to work another 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. Over the years, Jacob and Laban's relationship became increasingly strained, and Jacob eventually decided to leave and return to his homeland. It was during his journey back to his homeland that Jacob had his famous encounter with God. In the middle of the night, a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Jacob refused to let go until the man blessed him. The man then revealed himself to be God and gave Jacob a new name, Israel, which means he struggles with God. This encounter marked a turning point in Jacob's life, as he was no longer known for his deceitful and scheming ways but was now a man who had struggled with God and emerged victorious. Jacob's redemption. Upon returning to his homeland, Jacob was faced with the prospect of reconciling with his brother, Esau, whom he had wronged many years earlier. To his surprise, Esau greeted him with open arms, and the two were reconciled. This marked another turning point in Jacob's life, as he had finally put his past behind him and had made peace with his brother. Over the years, Jacob had many more struggles and trials, including the loss of his beloved wife, Rachel, and the estrangement of some of his sons. However, he remained faithful to God and ultimately passed on his faith to his children, who would go on to become the founders of the 12 tribes of Israel. The legacy of Jacob is one of struggle, redemption, and faithfulness. His story reminds us that no matter how far we may have strayed from God, we can always turn back to Him. The story of the man who fought with God is a fascinating one, found in the book of Genesis in the Bible. It tells the story of Jacob, who wrestled with God and received a new name, Israel. This story has been interpreted in many ways throughout history, but there are 10 key reasons why it is relevant to Christians today. It shows the importance of perseverance in our faith journey. Jacob refused to let go until he received a blessing from God, and Christians today should be willing to fight for their faith in the same way. It highlights the power of prayer. Jacob wrestled with God through the night, and this shows that we should be persistent in our prayers and not give up easily. It demonstrates the transformative power of encountering God. Jacob's encounter with God changed him, and Christians should seek to have similar encounters that transform them. It shows that God can use even the most flawed individuals for His purposes. Jacob was a deceitful and selfish person, but God still chose him and used him to fulfill his plans. It emphasizes the importance of repentance and reconciliation. Jacob had to repent of his past mistakes before he could receive God's blessing, and Christians today should also seek to reconcile with those they have wronged. It teaches us that God's ways are not always easy to understand. Jacob was left with a limp after his encounter with God, and this reminds us that God's ways may not always be comfortable or easy for us to follow. It shows that God is faithful to his promises. Jacob received a new name and a promise from God that his descendants would be numerous and blessed, and Christians today can trust that God will also be faithful to his promises to them. It highlights the importance of humility. Jacob was humbled by his encounter with God, and Christians should also strive to remain humble before God. It demonstrates the importance of obedience to God. Jacob obeyed God's command to return to his homeland, and Christians today should also seek to obey God's commands in their own lives. It shows that God is with us even in our struggles. Jacob wrestled with God and came out with a blessing, and Christians can also trust that God is with them in their struggles, and will ultimately bring good out of them. In conclusion, the story of the man who fought with God is a powerful reminder of the importance of perseverance, prayer, transformation, repentance, reconciliation, trust, humility, obedience, and the faithfulness of God. Christians today can learn from Jacob's example and strive to follow God more closely in their own lives.